So good evening, everyone from Dubai. Of course, it's very early morning for Dr. Sarah and midday somewhere for Dr. Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, evening for us. We're really excited. As you can see, our students have worked really hard to make this a little bit different than a normal panel discussion. So they have worked in the background to come up with a short film that they have scripted, then recorded, then edited, and now they're going to be bringing it to you. The short film is called Way Back. And I'm so pleased and honored to introduce the student board and active committee members who've done this. And as representative in the panel today, we have Rukaya Shabir, who is from Middlesex University. She is representing the student board, and we have Nuha Patani. She is from GEMS New Millennium School, Dubai. She is in 12th grade, and she is representing the Students Active Board. Behind the scenes, we have all the other members, of course, they worked. But on the scene today, we have the two of them representing. And of course, with us, we have our international experts, Dr. Thomas Lancaster. I don't think either of them need an introduction, but Dr. Thomas is the guru who actually coined the term contract cheating all those years ago. And we are here, of course, going to be discussing all of that and so much more. Dr. Sarah comes to us, joins us from Canada, which is the insane early hour today. I think it's not barely even 7. So thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. She is a tremendous power horse of publishing, of doing research and connecting people across the globe on this issue. So thank you once again to all of you. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining you guys and having this session with you guys. And I do hope you guys are able to enjoy it and give us your 2 bits on what the students have put together. So over to you, Rukaya, Nuha, and Tisha.
A very warm welcome to everyone present here today. Thank you for joining us today as we present our perspective and our documentary on student cheating. This documentary will follow a student named Tisha who encounters various forms of cheating as she grows up, and she faces different situations in life, some at home, some in school, some at university, and this leads her towards a dark path of self-doubt and very low self-esteem. And we have an epilogue which is way back. So let's start the movie. Tisha, if we can share your screen.
Dr. Z?
Yes.
I think only the presenter could share the screen. I'm unable to share.
Okay, I will just make you the presenter 1 second. Yeah, there you go. Oh, you just shared and then it went away.
Just a second. Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
You shared with the motion and video, yes?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, over to you.
Mom, can you do my project? It is due tomorrow. Yes, sure, dear. Which subject is it for? It's for my maths class. Okay, what is the topic of the project? The topic is shapes and numbers. Okay, I'll do that. Make sure it is ready by tomorrow morning. Yes, sure. Thank you.
Okay, so as we can see in the scenario, the parent is helping the student with their work, and it's a very common situation nowadays. Nuha, do you have any question for our panelist?
Yes, thank you, Rukaya. So we all know how now, more than ever, parents may be disproportionately involved in their children's education, sometimes to the point where they assist or even complete their assignments for them. To what extent is this support ethically permissible? Dr. Sarah, Dr. Lancaster, either of you can answer the question.
Yes, sure. Yeah, I will start this one. I mean, it's such an important topic to think about because everybody's experience is shaped by their home life and their wider environment. So people learn from their parents, not only in terms of academic work, but in terms of ethical behavior in general, and how people approach their life and society and what people think is morally acceptable. So I certainly remember from my point of view when I was a child that my parents helped me to learn to read, helping me to learn my times tables, helping me to practice my spellings that you got set every week from school to do. And that was incredibly valuable to have that support at home. And I suspect I wouldn't be there where I am today had it not been for the support of my parents when I was growing up. So it's something that we really want to see, but there is this line that has to be drawn between when a student is learning for themselves and gaining knowledge and when it goes too far and a parent is doing work, because that really doesn't help anyone. Maybe a parent feels that they have won a prize at school for their child, and that's great for their own self-esteem, but I think deep down that parents know that isn't the right thing to do. And if the culture is that we're pushing parents to feel they have to do this to compete with the other parents, then really it's a message we need to take up at the school level to try and avoid that. Because there's nothing wrong with getting a bit of help. There's nothing wrong with saying that you'd like to make a model, but it's too dangerous for you to use the scissors to do this, so I will help you with this and help you to shape your vision a bit. But to actually just set aside and get someone else to do it is not acting with academic integrity.
Thank you, Dr. Lancaster. Another question I had on a similar vein is, what should a parent's ideal role be in their child's education? Is it merely like a supporting role, or is it more fundamental, more extensive in a way?
So maybe we direct that to Dr. Sarah.
Well, I think Dr. Lancaster was absolutely correct when he talked about parents helping students to build their own skills. And, you know, there's been lots of things written about the number of hours it takes to develop expertise in something, and 10,000 hours, right? And so, but that's an individual practicing themselves. And often if the person helping or coaching the person is a parent or a tutor or a coach, that's okay, as long as the individual is learning and practicing those skills for themselves. But when the person is no longer, the student's no longer the one doing the work, then we might have crossed the line. So parents might want to set up their own boundaries around what's the difference between them doing the work for their children and the children doing the work for themselves. And also, as Dr. Lancaster pointed out, I think parents have a role to play in talking with the schools and the teachers, sometimes the headmasters or the headmistresses, around what are the expectations for doing this work. Because we know that contract cheating happens in conditions in which it is meant to happen, or it's facilitated sometimes by schools or the educational systems themselves. So if a child comes home and says, well, my math project is due tomorrow, then the teacher and the school have set up the conditions in which it's very easy for the parent to complete the work on behalf of the students. So the students have a role to play, the parents have a role to play, and I think the parents can be the bridge between the students and the teachers and the school, who also have a role to play.
Thank you.
I think I have to point out, I think the way the students captured this particular scene where the parent comes from work and the child goes back to just sitting on the device. So I think anyways, it's even double the work for parents, you know. So I don't know what they're thinking when they're deciding to just take up the project for the child to do. We do have a question that has come in the chat from Professor Gumati. What should teachers do if they feel that the assignment or project was exceeding the level expected of a child at that age? Anyone, maybe Dr. Thomas or Dr. Sarah?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Zenith. I'll pick that one up there. And I think this is quite a difficult question to answer in general terms because styles of schooling and teaching vary a lot around the world and the educational systems differ. So you've got a particular expectation in the UAE about what will be done. And as I know, Zenith, from your own work, where you've said this is not just a hypothetical example, this really happens there, that there are parents who are doing the work for their children from a young age because that's the expectation set from the school. So often if we turn that question around, it's the parents who really should be addressing the problem at the side of the school. Now, to answer the question in the chat, if the teachers feel the assignment or project is at the wrong age, then I think we could perhaps take a leaf out of the book of what we might do at a university level there, which is just to start to talk to the child, to ask them, how did this idea come about there? How did you develop this? What skills did you learn? And even just I would ask them, what help or what support did you get from your parents? Because clearly there's nothing wrong with getting support, and we need and expect that in our life, but we just don't want to be in a situation where it's done completely by the parent and not by the child. But really, this should be the opening point for a discussion.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah, anything on that?
Absolutely. And we're starting to see, the idea that the parents could shift their role from doing the work on behalf of the students, but instead advocating for their children rather than doing the work on their behalf.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Rukaya, Tisha, and Dawn.
I really love the points that both our panelists presented, very well formatted, and it talks about a very deep issue that is very current in nowadays in the world because of the COVID pandemic. If Tisha, you can start the video and we can go on to the next scene, next stage of life.
Good morning, students.
Good morning, ma'am.
It's 9:30, so keep your books closed and we'll start the exam. Write your name, registration number, okay? All the best. No talking, please.
Yes, so as we saw in this video, there is cheating happening inside the class during a test. And we have some stats from Stanford University that says that 86% of students admit to cheating while in school. And we see students getting very creative about cheating. What do you feel, Noha, about this?
Yes, Rukaya, thank you. I actually had a question for Dr. Eaton about this. As a student myself, I can attest to how difficult school can get at times, how hectic our schedules can get, with exams and events and assignments piling up. It leads to feelings of helplessness, which often makes us ethically and morally confused. Do you think that today, like today, our education systems, do you think that they are equipped, appropriately equipped to help students when they reach that level of confusion and desperation? And if not, how much more do we need to do as an education system to get there?
A huge question, but I think you've touched on, excuse me, some of the key points, and that, you know, in this video, which is so well done, and congratulations to everyone who's worked on the video, we see a form of assessing students that dates back centuries. I mean, others have written about how exam cheating goes back to the 6th century. And so one of the questions I'm always asking myself is, why are we assessing students today in the same way that they did in the 6th century? Like, surely we can do better in the 21st century. And we know that students' lives from a very young age are inherently more complex than they have been at any other point in history. So I think it's important to even challenge these ways of like giving a test. Is this honestly the best way to know that students have learned what they're being taught in school? I'm not convinced, but I think since so often teachers and administrators who make the decisions will assess students in the same way that they were assessed when they were students. So we continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, when I think what's needed is just a moment to pause and ask ourselves as educators, what's best for our students? And sometimes I think that means we should talk to our students a little bit more about what would make sense for them and how they would like to be evaluated for their learning, because the lives of young people like you today are so much different even than when I was going to school. I think it's actually unfair, and I'll go this far, unethical, to continue to use the same evaluation methods over and over and over again without stopping to think if we're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Dr. Eaton. I think it was really, really interesting how you spoke about the vicious cycle that we have of how we're just teaching and then having those strict exams over and over again. Even though we've come all the way to 21st century, we still have the same cycle going on. Dr. Lancaster, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think Dr. Eaton has expressed that so well. You're perhaps in the unfortunate position of putting a panel together where we're both likely to agree with each other a lot, because we have quite similar views about the wider society and ethics and where we're at. I mean, I guess it is not the easiest thing to be a teacher, and so I do have appreciation for the hard work that teachers do, and quite often some of these constraints come from outside the teachers themselves. They come from the wider government requirements there, or the idea that there have to be tests because they have always been part of the curriculum. And I don't have a problem with a certain level of testing and examination. It's a tried and tested method. I don't think it necessarily needs to be somebody in a room for 2 hours having to solve problems, having to learn and memorize a lot of material that may never need again, because that isn't necessarily a skill we want in the modern world. When we do have computers, we do have mobile phones, we can look things up when we need them. We can calculate things using the technology. So we have to make sure people are equipped for the world today, not the world which was 50 years ago or hundreds of years ago there. So it is thinking about the assessment. It is thinking about the wider world as well, because one thing that I find, I'm a computer scientist, my students will go out and they will go into professions that require them to still keep learning when they go into their life, and still unfortunately, to take exams, because so many professions require their members to take exams. So there is a certain amount of coping with that situation needed, but it shouldn't get to the stage where anyone feels under so much pressure that all they have to think about is the exams and the effect on their life there. We should be trying to instill on students from a very young age that the learning is valuable for them and we want them to do well, and that's why we're doing things, and to look at what way do we assess people to be fit for the standards of today, not the standards of yesterday.
I agree. Both of you have presented very good point that there is a need for the government and the education system to rethink their assessment methods. I really like the point because I've personally witnessed it. The education system is many centuries old, like Dr. Sarah mentioned, and the assessment pattern is the same, never changing, even after we've had 4 industrial revolutions. I do feel that there is a need for that. Tisha, if we can continue the video to the next part.
Hey Tish, could you please help me with the journal work? Yeah, sure. I have a diagrams question regarding your diagrams. Is it this question? Yes, this one. Sure, no problem. I can do it for you. Are you sure? I mean, are we allowed to do it? Yeah, I mean, you've done it before, so I don't think it's silly. Okay, sure. Thank you.
Are we back home?
Yeah, okay. Here you go, Anna. Have you drawn all the diagrams? Yes, all of them. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Girls, submit your record book.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here to record. Thank you. Bye.
Take your books. Here.
Thank you.
Hey, dude, how prepared are you for this? I've only done the first 2 chapters. I've only done the last 2. Oh my god, so that means you haven't done organic? You haven't done organic? No, what do we do now? You're so dead. I thought you would do it. No. Hey, Tisha.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How prepared are you?
I am prepared, I guess.
Tisha, do you mind helping us? You can get your phone to school, right?
Yes, I'm allowed to, but why are you asking?
So that you can help us out in the exam.
To help you out? I mean, are we allowed to do that?
I mean, I helped you out with your record writing. This is the least you can do.
Okay, fine, sure, I'll help you, but only this time.
Yeah, okay.
Morning, students. Good morning. Please keep the books aside. We'll start the exam in 2 minutes. All the best.
this is what you guys were doing, huh? Three of you all stop writing. Give me your papers. Come to my office. No, no, I'm not accepting. No, no, please. No, no. Come to my office. Huh? No, no, no. Three of you come to my office, huh?
He's messed up big time.
Rukaya, we can't hear you.
Yes. Hello. Okay. I hope I'm audible now. So here we see another very common form of cheating, sneaking mobile phone into the examination hall. Now, of course, we have some bans on bringing mobile phones, but mobile phones are actually allowed for some students because of personal reasons. So, Nuha, I would like to pass on the mic to you. What do you think about this?
Yeah, thank you, Rikaya. So we actually have a comment in the chat which is related to the question I was about to ask, which is directed to Dr. Lancaster about the role of influence and peer pressure when a student transitions from middle school to high school, when our dependency changes from our family to maybe our friends. So does the external environment or the type of company and peers that a student has, do these things affect a student's innate perspective on truthfulness? Do our moral compasses change when we witness things? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Great question there. I mean, for all of us, then we are shaped based on our own experiences and based on the company we keep. So if we think about this in other situations, people who go into lives of criminality often have associated with other people in a similar situation to them. And I would not like to compare academic cheating with going into a life of crime, because it is not the same thing, but clearly you're influenced by the company you keep. And so we saw in the video this idea of reciprocation, or you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And so somebody has helped you, you then feel like you have to help them. So there is an underlying question here really about why sharing answers is viewed as help in the first place. It may seem it's just a bit of homework, I didn't have time to do it, so it's perfectly innocent and catch up with it afterwards. But then once that favor gets out there, then you need to do a favor back, and you get the situation as we saw in the video of people sharing mobile phones and sharing answers around. And I guess one thing that stood out to me in the video, and I know it's true to life in many situations, is how oblivious the person invigilating was to all of this. Actually walked around the room and didn't notice a mobile phone. And so sometimes you wonder that, is it that people don't notice, or is it that they prefer not to notice because of all the additional work and pressure that is associated from trying to address academic misconduct in that situation there? And it was only when the phone was dropped on the floor that the teacher felt that she had to act about it and to do something, and she would rather the students had just quietly followed the sharing behavior between themselves rather than making that kind of noise. And yeah, as I see in the chat, the word, it's peer acceptance. You want to fit in there, you need a group of friends to go with that. There's also a mention about the pressure to get top marks as well, that can come from the home too, and can come from people thinking if you don't get high marks here, you could be a failure in your later life, which means people even at school level feel the need to take these shortcuts. So yeah, so very much so it's something that teachers have to adapt to, but we shouldn't be in the situation where mobile phones, that students even feel they need to be passing mobile phones around in the first place.
Thank you, Dr. Lancaster. Another question that Dr. Gomati had in the chat, which perhaps Dr. Eaton could address, was about how assessments, which can test large number of students at the same time, is always a win. So do you think that as we go into the future, more objectivized testing is the way to go, or is more personalized testing better for avoiding academic dishonesty?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And you can probably guess my answer already, right? That when assessments are personalized to the individual, then they have more meaning. But I understand when teachers are faced with very large classes, then we look for ways to scale up the assignments. And what I think what can be lost in that scaling up is that the assignment lacks meaning. And so it propagates and upholds industrialized ways of doing education, right? And I was watching this video and I was reflecting on some of the things I've learned here being situated in Canada. I'm what's called a person from a settler background, meaning my parents were both had heritage from somewhere else. Both my parents have British heritage. And so being in Canada, we're starting to look at the ways that colonization has affected our educational systems and the oppression that comes with that. And when I look at these forms of testing, I can't help but wonder how we're propagating oppressive forms of behavior control and automation of behavior. And I think it's what if we flip that on its head? What if instead of focusing on what students know, we focused instead on how they know? And when I think about what I've learned from my Indigenous colleagues here, also asking the question, who did you learn it from? And this idea of tracing back the ancestry of our knowledge and remembering who taught us what and how we learned, whether that was from knowledge keepers, teachers who are older than us or our peers, to have somebody situate themselves in their learning and say, these are the people that I've learned from. That's a completely different way of thinking about building knowledge and then carrying it forward, because part of that responsibility then means keeping the memory of those who've taught us. And so this is very different, and it actually rejects the idea that we can understand how students learned by putting them in rows and giving them exams. Now that doesn't necessarily scale very well, but there have to be better ways than doing this, because these forms of testing really just propagate industrial forms of education that are long gone.
I agree, Dr. Sarah. I actually read in an article somewhere that the education system assessment methods that we are following is from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution 1, where they wanted people to come and sit and do as they're told. And that's the way we are teaching our students to do as they're told, not think out of the box. So I definitely think you're on to some good points here. And of course, as Dr. Lancaster mentioned, that there is a need to draw a line between helping and crossing that line into cheating. So students need to understand where to draw that line and how to create that boundary. Tisha, if we can proceed for the next part.
It's okay, don't worry. We'll handle it.
I shouldn't have hurt you guys.
It's okay,
It's
we can
fine.
do something. It'll happen. It's okay, Krishna, don't worry. We'll handle this. So tell me what's happening. Whose phone is this? It's Tisha's phone. By the way, look at the way you both are dressed. Go to the washroom and change, go. Okay. Tisha, stay here. Tisha, dear, tell me what's happening. I didn't expect this from you. Those two students are, I get it, they don't come to school. You see, like how they dressed up. But I never expected this from you. What's going on? Why do you take your phone inside?
Ma'am, I had to because once the girl helped me with my journal work, so I had to do this favor for her.
Which journal?
The biology journal book.
Oh, and?
She helped me complete the diagrams. So today morning, she was like, I helped you with that, so you have to do me a favor of taking your phone inside.
Like, how come I never noticed it?
Okay. Let them come back and talk to them, but this is your first and last time you're doing this, okay? I don't expect this to be next time. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's okay. Go.
So in this video, in this part, we notice how the teacher dealt with the situation. So Dr. Gomiti has a very good point that peer acceptance is a very big thing at that age. I have read instances in newspaper where the student privately reports the teacher anonymously because they don't want to come off as a snitch or a tattle snake in front of their friends. So how do you feel, Noha? Like what should be the teacher's way of dealing with situations? Did Tisha get off very easily in the situation?
Thank you, Rukaya. And I think the best person to, or the best people to answer that would be our panel. So, what should the teacher have done in that situation, especially with the dynamic of, I didn't expect this from you. I expected this from the other students, but not from you. So that was an interesting dynamic that the students added there in the video. Do you have any comments about that, Dr. Eaton or Dr. Lancaster? Yeah.
Jump in here. It seems that the response to some extent is a fairly traditional response, but it pits the student against the teacher, right? So we're seeing a scenario here that has the potential to foster adversarial and antagonistic relationships between teachers and students. And so again, we're sort of creating new cycles going forward. And I can say that one of the things that we're starting to explore in Canada across universities and more broadly is again a completely different approach. It's called a restorative approach. And instead of one party against another, a facilitator comes in and asks the parties involved, all parties involved, to engage in a conversation if they're ready and willing, and to have a discussion about who has been harmed. And we start with what's the harm that has been caused, who caused it, and who was on the receiving end of that harm. And in those situations, we can see that different parties have been harmed in different ways. The teacher may have actually felt harmed. She may have felt betrayed by her students. She may have felt like she was a failure as a teacher. And that when the students understand what's the harm that's been caused, then the parties involved can agree, okay, how do we reconcile that? And what's the way to repair the harm and go forward in a good way? And what does that look like when the parties themselves agree on what's gone wrong, who's been affected, and then what's the best way to solve the problem? It's a very different and non-traditional way of addressing these problems. We are starting to use it more and more here in our universities. I don't know that any high schools are using it yet, but it causes people to sort of stop and think and engage with a discussion about the implications of their action and the effect of their actions, and then decide on a remedy together, that then there would also be a process to follow up on that remedy and ensure that it was enacted. So in this situation, I could imagine a facilitator coming in and having each person say, okay, what happened? What's the harm? And if somebody says there was no harm, then that can take the conversation in a different way. If everybody else says, actually, there was harm caused. And this is a reconciliatory and restorative approach that is designed to help people think through the implications, the ethical implications of their actions after something's happened once, so that they can reconsider it again going forward. And so it's not based on like crime and punishment, action and reaction, but rather we are a community, and it's up to us to ensure that our community remains whole.
Absolutely correct, Dr. Sarah. Love the point you mentioned, like Dr. Lancaster already mentioned, that was the teacher being purposefully ignorant because she didn't want to address the situation, or was she not aware of the situation? We have a very interesting common form of cheating next. Tisha, if you can begin. It's a very interesting one that I hope you'll enjoy.
I'm so tired. I genuinely need a vacation. Oh my god, I have an assignment due in 5 days and I've not begun yet? To be honest, I do have plenty of time. Let me watch some YouTube. Wow, this website says they completed an assignment and wouldn't show any signs of plagiarism? You know what? Let me contact them. What? Why are they doing this to me? Oh god.
Okay. Rukaya or Noha?
Yes, of course. As we see here, a simple procrastination has led Disha into a very huge blackmailing scam. Dr. Thomas, what are your views on it? On SMEs and contract cheating?
And if I could just add to Rukaya's question as well, about the interesting aspect of plagiarism detection in contract cheating, and especially computer-led plagiarism detection. You may have heard of GPT-3, which was a machine that used artificial intelligence and deep learning to almost accurately imitate natural human language. And given a prompt, it could write a full-blown essay, a full-blown, almost coherent essay that is completely original. So with the advancements that we're having in AI and technology every day, do you think that it would get easier for students to feign original content, or would it actually get harder, considering that our plagiarism detectors are actually improving by the day as well?
Okay, thank you for that. This being an area I've spent a lot of my life working on, I could answer about 50 questions, of which I think you've possibly rolled up about 50 questions into one there, but I'm also conscious that we only have a limited amount of time and so many things to consider here, with all the points you brought up so well through these videos. So in terms of the risk, as soon as students start engaging with contract cheating services, as we've seen in the video, the student is at risk of being extorted and being blackmailed. And we've seen this happen. I have had students in this situation contact me, and it's very difficult. I've seen some of the documentation that companies send. It can be very sophisticated. They can make it look like official letters demanding that information will be released about them, which they can not release the information in return for an additional fee. And there's a much wider conversation to have about cyber security and helping students to understand that their personal information, as soon as it becomes public, people can misuse it, as seen in the video by Buddy Essays there doing this. Now, technology is changing all the time. I am a computer scientist. I'm very interested in developments in technology. I think technology can be used for the greater good. It can also be misused if we don't know how to interact with it. And that is one of the things that we have to address from a school level, about how to interact and use technology to the benefit of everyone. And I'm going to talk a little bit tomorrow in a session for International Centre for Academic Integrity about the fact that it's 15 years since we published our first research paper on contract cheating. And indeed, GPT-3, the technology which generates text, is getting very powerful now. And you can go on there and get text generated for you in the form of an essay. And I suspect some of the companies like the one in the video are even starting to use that technology. So students may be paying for work that doesn't even have a human writer behind it and may not be very good and would mean they're not learning anything. So we have to be aware about that. There is certainly very good technology for detecting plagiarism out there. It is not perfect. There are probably ways to defeat it. But technology is not something we should ever rely on as a complete solution. Technology is there to help us as educators. It's also there to help students to learn to write and learn to reference and not accidentally make mistakes with their writing, because nobody wants people to lose out on a qualification through an unintentional error when they could use it as a learning experience, or that restorative experience, as Dr. Eaton mentioned earlier on. So we need to be aware of these changes. The technology will get better, and we need to think about how we assess. But we can all get involved in this conversation because it's such a powerful and important conversation to have.
Yes, that's a very good point to be noted, that technology isn't in itself a good or a bad thing. It's how you view and how you use the technology that decides whether you perform good actions or bad actions. Let's proceed with the video then. We'll see what happens to Tisha.
Hello? Hey Tisha, where are you at? I'm not seeing you at uni. Yes, Shruti.
Hello, Tisha. Why aren't you responding? Can you hear me?
Shruti, I
What's
don't know what to
happening,
do.
Tisha? Tisha, it's okay, don't cry, okay? I'm coming over to your place.
Hello.
Hello, Mom.
How are you both?
Fine. This is my friend Tisha. We've actually been in a situation, so we want to talk about it to you.
Okay, so what happened was I got an assignment from my university and I kept on procrastinating the work. I went on social media apps, wasted my whole time watching TV, YouTube, and when I was near the deadline, I had no other choice to go online and contact an organization where I had to ask them for help and they helped me with an assignment. But now I got a message that they're asking for more money and they are blackmailing me saying that they would
It's okay.
they
We'll
would
do something about it.
they would release my information to my university and I don't know what to do. I just want to give up my life.
It's okay, Tisha, don't cry. We'll surely get a solution to this.
Okay, so that's what has been happening. Don't worry, we'll sort this matter out. I will talk with the organization. I will also make sure that I talk to your teacher and sort it out with her. I'll make sure you do your assignment again and submit it. Okay? Good that you brought this up and realized your mistake. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Now we're at the end of the movie and we've learned a very important lesson here. We saw the way that the counselor handled the situation and the way it was dealt with and how Tisha finally had a happy ending of sorts. Dr. Zeenat, what do you feel about the situation?
So I think I really want to bring up here the role that friends, family, teachers actually play when it comes to students and well-being. Because all of this, what we've seen today in the last 1 hour we've discussed, has to do with mental health as well, right? And I think we've had some fantastic discussions in the past from other guests and sessions which have looked at how important it is to think about student well-being. And we never know what the students' private life is or what they're going through when we have had a situation happen. And it could be just that one more thing that could just push them over the edge, so to speak. But I really want to go back and hear from Dr. Sarah and Dr. Lancaster. Maybe Dr. Sarah, you start off and then move on to Dr. Lancaster on this.
This was a very moving part of this video for me, and I just wanted to congratulate everyone who put the video together again, because it's really wonderful launching point for a discussion. And I think one of the key takeaways for me is, I mean, looking at the life cycle from the beginning to the end, is to focus on the person and who they are as a human being. How are they growing? How are they learning? And that growth and learning are not just about absorbing content or doing assignments. That growth and learning also involves more moral and ethical conduct, as well as learning the content, navigating relationships with others, protecting oneself from external predators, and then in the end, also connecting with others who can help us. And when help actually means help. It doesn't mean helping someone cheat, or it doesn't mean doing something for someone, but honestly supporting the person in so many ways. So I think you've captured in this video some of the key highlights and the complexities that we're grappling with every day. And you've made some really important links that cheating is not simply a transactional matter of passing notes like it was in one day. That might be how it starts, but it's not necessarily how it ends. So congratulations again on the video.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. Dr. Lancaster?
Yeah, thank you for that. And of course, I echo what Dr. Eaton said about how useful the video is. And I hope it's something you can share with other students and let them have those discussions themselves about the different issues raised. And mental health and student well-being is such a big issue for us in general, not just in relation to contract cheating and academic integrity, but just in relation to the fact that students can often feel isolated. They don't have any control about their situation, and they have all the external pressures on them before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and beyond. That is not going to change. And so in situations like the one in the video, where a student is being blackmailed by a company, then my first thought is always going to be with the student. It would be to encourage the student to talk about it, to go and use their network of friends, to go and speak to the appropriate people at their university, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a personal tutor, a trusted lecturer, a member of the student union. There are different people around the world all doing very similar jobs and offering that support. Because first and foremost, we will think about the well-being of the individual student. I don't know. I wish I could say it always ended as happily as it did in that video there. It's not something that can just always be swept, just have no consequences at the end of a situation there. But I would like to hope that any kind of academic integrity process in place in a university has the student in mind throughout it. But there is a wider question. I've had this with other staff, with other students, about what should a university do in that situation. Of course, we support the student there. That goes, I hope, without question. But do we just ignore the fact that the student has got perhaps marks they didn't deserve, or how do we address it? I would like to think they're always given another chance in some form, and I'd like to think we can find ways it never gets to that situation in the end. But if it does, I would encourage people to come forward. As I mentioned, the companies operating in this space, as we said, they're incredibly dangerous, incredibly deceptive. We can't always just get in contact with a company and say, stop bothering our students. They won't respond. They might be operating in a different country, and they might still continue. They might try other forms of blackmail. It's not limited just to an academic situation. There's always the chance they might try and find out where you work afterwards and go after you that way. So we don't want to think it's something that will end, but a lot of the time they will move on to an easier target once they stop getting the money. That is like this kind of situation that happens everywhere. So so please engage with students, talk to them about contract cheating, talk to them about how in the end they won't benefit, and before it gets to the situation of going to a firm, then please talk to the staff, ask for an extension, say you don't know how to get started with this assignment, look at what all the other options are first, because most people everyone, we're in education because we want students to do well and we want to help. We're not in there to try and have people fail or set roadblocks. That's just not why people go into teaching, whether it's at school or university level.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's very important that we don't know what kind of support they really are getting from their family members. If their family members are even aware of things like this that's happening in their academic lives. So we may actually be the first and only sources of some kind of support when students face these kind of situations. So very quickly, maybe we are almost out of time and we want to take a couple of questions. So I know you guys are doing a lot in your own campuses. You've initiated the kind of support that students need. So maybe Dr. Sarah, something that you guys have done, and then maybe Dr. Thomas.
Thank you for the question. And I think the involvement of students is so important in this, and the project you've done, I think, is wonderful. And I'd actually encourage you to find ways to share it with students around the world, because even though every educational system is different, there were some things in there I think that would resonate with students in Canada and in other countries as well. And I know that our student government here is taken up Academic Integrity Week this year in ways that they hadn't done before, which is fantastic. They're doing Facebook events and Instagram events, and they're reaching out to students in that way. So I think that the more that we can get students involved and promoting academic integrity from a positive perspective, rather than just talking about avoiding consequences if misconduct, but also get them thinking about how do we promote ethical conduct and integrity in a good way, then that's, I think, the key. So I'm proud of the work that our students are doing to take up this work for social media, because they're generating conversations among themselves that they can only have among themselves. And we as teachers can support them, but when they're taking the lead, I think that's really when we know that we have success in this space.
Absolutely. Thomas, I think we definitely want to hear a little bit about that student program that you've got going.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, Zenith, or I feel like I should say Dr. Khan and Dr. Eaton, who are both doing such a lot of work in this area, but I don't want to make this conversation about us. I want to keep this conversation about students, because to me, the power, the only way we can make change to academic integrity and our wider educational system is through the students there. So one thing that I've been working on with students is trying to help them to take the leadership role in this space, trying to get students involved in academic research, because I'm a researcher trying to use their experience to explore things that would be very difficult for me to do objectively as an academic, because I'm no longer a student age. I don't have the same contacts. I don't go through the same university experience as they do for that. So it is using the power of our students. And so I talked a bit yesterday at a separate session as part of Academic Integrity Week, particularly for Ireland, but the video is out there for anyone who is interested, about different ways that students can partner with staff and students can get involved in the academic integrity movement. And so I looked at things like research, looked at things like a new module that I've been running a second time this year for undergraduate students at university, helping them to develop as academic integrity researchers. I think it's the only module of its type in the world. It's been quite well received so far. We've had some interesting research from the previous year of students. I've got another group which has just started off this year. We had a great discussion last night in our first online meeting with them as well, about their experiences and what they thought academic integrity meant before they started the module. And so much of what they thought academic integrity meant was directive. It was don't cheat, don't plagiarize, reference there. And the whole ideas, the fundamental values of academic integrity, about how to act ethically and truthfully, how to have courage, and how to make sure that academic integrity involves everyone. It's not purely for students, it's about bringing the whole community on board. They were just completely alien concepts, and the more we can expose students to those ideas, get them talking about these areas for themselves, supporting other students, like in the situation in the video where that support is needed in a legitimate way as opposed to doing the work for them. These are the very important conversations we have to be having moving forward, with our students at the forefront of the conversation.
What a source of inspiration, for sure. I want to open the floor up for maybe a quick question or two. We've just got like under a minute left. Rukaya, do you have the questions?
Yes, so today we watched a video on different forms of cheating and how it impacts a student life and the various ways they encounter it throughout their life. So before we end the session, I have a small question for both Dr. Ethan and Dr. Lancaster. So we read in the news recently about the UK SML essay ban, right, on the SMLs. So what do you feel about it? Like, what's your opinion? Is it a good step forward, or is it just another one of a half attempted attempt at trying to ban things? Because we all know that there are various ways that students can get around it using loopholes. So is it a very good, effective way? And another question I had was these contract cheating, SMLs and everything, they're very easily available and accessible to students, and it's very easy to not only contact it but go through with it, the procedure, the process. It's very easy compared to the actual work of researching. So do you feel that the government, and more specifically the education system, plays a role in it, in deciding and influencing a student?
So maybe Dr. Lancaster, 30 seconds, and then Dr. Sarah, 30 seconds.
Yeah, the thing about addressing contract cheating and academic integrity in general is there isn't one single approach that works. We have to use a balance of measures. And in terms of law, I think laws send a strong message, but as you said, there are ways to get around these. And I don't want any law in place that makes our students look like criminals there. And even if we were to try and ban things, there are always unintended consequences with bans. Things get caught that have been the wrong way. What happens, for instance, you may or may not feel this is something to think about, what happens to all the writers we put out of work who are relying on this income to feed their families? There are always big ethical questions in this space, but ultimately my aim in this is that students get the awards that are appropriate based on the effort they put in, and we reward people for learning and doing and participating.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah?
Yeah, I think legislation is just one tool, and we want to be cautious about looking at any one way to address contract cheating or academic misconduct as being the solution. This is a complex problem and will require complex ways to address it. Sitting here in Canada and watching what's going on in the UK and with in other countries with regards to legislation, I confess that I'm a little bit envious, because in Canada I think we're a little bit further behind, and I do wonder, as other countries take stronger legal and legislative action against contract cheating companies, where will they turn? And right now I see Canada as a particularly fertile market when other countries are making it more difficult. So we're going to have to ramp up our efforts even more than we have in the past.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think with that, we have severely run out of time. But thank you so much. It's been an honor for all of us to be, to be here, to listen to you, give your 2 bits about the, the video that the students have put up, but more importantly, the actual concepts that we have heard discussed, the issues and the dilemmas, and there are so many dimensions to each of the problems and issues that we have, of course, talked about today. And naturally, they're endless. We could be talking about them forever. But we have just this 1 hour, so we wanted to definitely thank Dr. Thomas, Dr. Sarah, the speakers, our students who did the effort. Students, please do switch on your webcams. I do want to see your faces. The ones behind the scenes, that's Tisha. She was the one doing the video editing and of course the main actor, lead. And to our sponsors, Studio City, and we had Original, they were our gold sponsors, and Turnitin was our bronze sponsor. Our host campus was University of Wollongong in Dubai, and our associate member campus was Gulf Medical University, Ajman. Again, tremendous support from the universities as well in helping the students and helping us. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been wonderful. Thank you to the audience for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure for us. Thank you.